spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And I don't know what you're doing this week. I know what I'm doing this week, and it's gonna be kind of scary-ish. That's the whole point, right? That's what we do?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm covering an exorcism that's sad and scary. So what are you going to be covering this week?
I'm going to be covering the Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm thing.
I had never heard of this until you brought it up, I think, when you added it to the resource sheet that we have, and I'm kind of excited to learn about it. So that's fun stuff. Before we jump into either of the topics, I do want to remind everyone that it's January, a Patreon push. So go over to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast, check out our tiers, and see if there's anything that suits you. They are monthly donations, and they start as low as $1. And for $1, you get early access to all episodes, including ad-free episodes. So it's a pretty good thing to check out if you're a fan of the show. And it actually supports us in quite a few ways and helps us to increase the production value of the show. The tiers do go up, and you get more and more as you donate more and more, including at the $10 level where you start to get some merchandise made by Robin herself. She makes the design, she has these things printed, and then she sends them your way, usually once every 3 months or so. It's a quarterly thing?
It's quarterly, yeah. So that 12 divided by 3 equals 4, right? Yeah, so yeah, it's every 3 months. And this season, so the spring season that's coming up is going to be a Nessie keychain. And then I've already designed 2 new keychains. One is going to be the Night Walkers, or Night Crawlers. The Night Crawlers that I covered in an episode, a few episodes ago. And then the next one after that is going to be Cthulhu, which I'm really excited about.
I gotta say, my favorite design of hers has always been Nessie. And when she showed me Cthulhu, I was like, it's kind of scary. And I also absolutely love it. So, it's definitely a great time to go over to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast and sign up. And it really does help us. And when we get to 150 patrons, we're going to go and stay at the Stanley Hotel and record an episode there. So really looking forward to doing that. And the closer we can get to 150 by the end of January, and you can always become a patron after January. This is just the month where we're really going to talk about it a lot. Definitely helps us, and then we'll get more content out there for you. So head on over there and check it out. So I believe I'm going to start, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe in a thing called love.
Just listen to the rhythm of the heart. All right, so I'm going to go. So this week, I
don't know. Do kids even know that song anymore?
I don't know. It's a song called, what is it? Power? No. It's by the band The Darkness. I know that.
Isn't it just, I believe in a thing called love?
It might be that long of a title.
I don't know. But it's, oh my gosh, that's from when we were in high school, I think, right?
I will say I have stood up in quite a few weddings. And when you come into the reception, they announce all the pairings of people, and then they announce the bride and the groom, and everyone stands up and cheers. And the most fucking amped up I have ever seen people, we were announced to, I believe in a thing called love. And it was kind of fucking epic.
It's a good song.
It was a really good song.
If you guys haven't listened to it, you should, because it's good. Okay, anyway, you can get into your topic.
All right, so this week I was going to cover the topic of the Muffin Man, as suggested by one of our listeners on Discord. But after doing a little bit of digging into it, all these internet articles and tweets that are getting out there saying the Muffin Man was actually a serial killer who was killing people between 1550 and 1612, all based on a parody site that just made some shit up and slapped a profile picture on there, like a guy holding up a sign saying his name that doesn't even match the name of the article. It's clearly parody. And so as I dug through more and more, I realized this is all not true. So I had to change gears. I was very disappointed.
Did you find out the origin of the Muffin Man, though?
I mean, I just found a bunch of things about the actual nursery rhyme where no one really knows where it came from and things like that. And it's probably some guy that actually lived on Drury Lane. And I think people just really get obsessed with this. Do you want to ruin something from your childhood? Well, click on this. Oh. And it's totally
clickbait.
It is 100% clickbait, and it's 100% all goes back. It all funnels back to a single site. And it's just so incredibly and obviously fake. It's hilarious. But I was like, all right, I'll check this out. If you're telling the truth, I'll check it out. And they didn't even post a link. So I wound up looking into it, just a cursory glance, oh, it does say that there's a serial killer named the Muffin Man. So I was very disappointed, but I put in my research to make sure it was fake. So after that, I had to change gears a little bit. And there was an update, in fact, that I wanted to give on a previous episode or series of episodes. So before I move into my topic, I do want to touch on Extraterrestrial October, which was very fun for me. And some of you may have heard this, but part of a bill that was recently signed into law in the United States, there was a section titled, quote, Advanced Aerial Threats. And in that, it stated that the Secretary of Defense and other heads of government agencies had 180 days to, quote, submit a report on unidentified aerial phenomenon.
UFOs, and then, pretty much.
In parentheses, it says also known as anomalous aerial vehicles. I'm like, I guess they're not using the term UFO anymore, including observed airborne objects that have not been identified. So the section is actually really long, and it details in like 8 separate bullet points all the things that need to be disclosed.
Those are all just fancy words for unidentified flying objects.
I know, right? But it's very long because they basically want to say, give us the info and all the info. So I don't know if we're supposed to be calling them AAV instead of UFO now, but UFO just sounds better. But there's still like 160 days left to go for full disclosure. However, the CIA recently released literally thousands of files, adding up to around 2,700 pages worth of documented sightings regarding UFOs. It's really weird because they released it in apparently a very difficult format, and they like put it out on a CD-ROM. Like just an actual CD. It's just so bizarre how they decided to just disperse this information.
Do we all get one?
No. You have to like request it. The wonderful folks over there at blackvault.com actually went through the process of acquiring the CD and then breaking apart all of the documents into individual documents and converting them into PDF. You can actually go to their website and go through all of it.
That's cool. That's really cool.
There's a lot. And I've already taken a peek at a few of them, and I'll be digging through more in the future and hopefully find some good stuff. So stay tuned on that front. Basically, what I've been doing is going through and finding the largest file sizes to see how many pages are in the report. And some of them are a little fucking crazy. So gonna have to dig into it. And
that's gonna be your new next October?
Probably. And like, I'm just telling you, like, full disclosure, what I plan to do is dig in anything. And if anything in that file sounds interesting or credible, then comparing it, 1, to sightings from civilians during that time, and 2, how it was handled or the official statements that were released when it was investigated, and then compare it to the document that was released. Because if they said like, oh, it was just like, swamp gas reflecting light from Venus, and then I look into the thing and it says like, oh, actually this was completely unidentified flying object. We don't know what it was. I'm like, aliens exist. Confirmed on Scaryish. So pretty excited for that. I don't know if I'm going to wait till October, but yeah.
Nice.
Little bit of an update on something as interesting as extraterrestrials. So that said, this week I'm going to be covering something a bit different from extraterrestrials. And by a bit, I mean a ton, and far more depressing. So I will warn you up front. This topic is going to be a lot different than ones we've covered in the past with similar content involving exorcisms. So, dear listeners, I present to you the exorcism of Kennedy Ife. This story takes place in a familiar place, in fact. I was kind of shocked when I saw where this is at. As another topic we've had on the show, it's Enfield in North London.
Wow.
And as you'll remember, one of the most famous hauntings
Enfield poltergeist
or hoaxes, depending on your perspective, of all time took place in Enfield, the Enfield poltergeist, like Robin just said. It is what the second Conjuring movie is based on. This particular story, however, takes place in August of 2016, so not that long ago. Y'all remember 2016, right? Well, you should, because I've recapped it at least twice, maybe even 3 times. All I'm saying about 2016 this time, Cubs won the World Series. That's literally it. Nothing else, good or bad, happened at all in 2016. This story centers around a 26-year-old named Kennedy Ife and his family. Okay, he had quite a large family. He had his father, Dr. Kenneth Ife, his mother, Josephine, and 5 brothers. Colin, who was 26, the same age as him. They must have been Irish twins or something like that. Harry, who was 32. Roy,
twins?
Who was 33.
They couldn't have been twins.
They weren't actual twins, but Daniel and Samuel, his other brothers who were both 20, were actual twins. So lots of kids. Dr. Ife, in fact, the father, Kenneth, I keep wanting to call him Kennedy because I thought it was a junior at first, but Kenneth Ife was a professor and consultant to the Economic Community of West African States, as well as an advisor to the British government. He had actually met with and been photographed with the Queen several times.
Nice.
So he's a very prominent figure.
It's funny because my reflex is to be like, oh, it's Queen, but there's only been one.
I know, right? There's only been one.
And she's just never going to die.
Knock on wood. We don't want to jinx that.
Oh, God.
Okay. So
That's a stocking on wood.
God. This began, like, if she dies, like, right after this comes out, it's going to be so fucked up. This, I don't think she can, though. She's way too powerful. She's awesome. This whole story began right around the beginning of August of 2016, like I mentioned. Kennedy began having trouble sleeping and started feeling an odd pain in his throat. So I'm going to pause really fast and tell you how this episode's going to go without spoiling it too much. So I'm going to tell you the account that has been put together essentially by folks outside of the family on what happened. And then I'm going to tell you a separate official account on what some of the folks involved in this and some of the family members stated happened, with some of those details like kind of intermingling because they're basically confirmed on both sides. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the first part. So Kennedy isn't feeling well. His throat hurts and he's just sort of having trouble sleeping. All right. This goes on for about 2 weeks throughout August. And if I had someone who came to me and told me, man, my throat hurts and I'm having trouble sleeping, I would think you're probably sick, you know? Like maybe you have a cold, maybe you have something, you caught a bug, that's why your throat hurts and your body's fighting it off, and that's probably why you're having trouble sleeping. And initially, this is what the family thought as well. They thought, oh, there's something wrong, maybe he just needs rest. But at the same time, he's having trouble sleeping, so when people need rest and they can't sleep, that's really difficult to deal with. And as time passed, Kennedy began to say really odd things that were causing concern. In regards to the pain in his throat, Kennedy told his family that he, quote, had a python or snake inside of him. He was convinced there was some sort of serpent inside of him. And that, in the Scaryish world,
Slytherin,
is what we call a red flag. Like, his brothers and his father were definitely concerned about him at this point, because it just came out of nowhere, and now all of a sudden he's saying things that are very odd. The first thing I want to note about this particular story that is different than so many others is that there aren't a lot of precursors that take place that we know of. Usually there's some sort of catalyst or a slow burn on the person who becomes afflicted by what we call a possession or whatever the case may be. Things like scratching on the walls, knocking on the walls, general haunting behavior, coupled with like the smell of sulfur and the like. This doesn't happen at all with Kennedy from what we know, and he did live at home from everything I can gather. It is very hard to know exactly what led up to this, unfortunately, but Kennedy was the only person who was experiencing anything differently, and it's not like the family all had something weird happen in the house or with all of them, and then all of a sudden it focused on a single person. It just cropped up with Kennedy.
So it seems like maybe it's some type of mental illness or something like that.
It kind of lends towards that because a lot of the possessions we cover have very similar details, and this one is very singular. It is similar to maybe one other possession, and I'll talk about that when we're done here. But it is, a little bit of foreshadowing here because the only sources we have on this aren't from him. So I'll continue. After stating he had a snake/python in him, his behavior became more and more erratic. He started saying more and more bizarre things, including, but not limited to, threatening to cut off his own penis.
What?
And that is, in any world, what we call a red flag. So I've read a lot of articles about this bizarre event to try and see why this threat was being made.
Oh my God.
From what I can gather, it seems that Kennedy was threatening to do this as some sort of purification or a removal from temptation, but that is not confirmed. That is just speculated on. Now, that said, he also continued to inform his family and apparently others that there was some sort of serpent in his body. So that is very present in his mind this whole time. Like, there's something in him, and it's a snake. Kenneth, the father, tries talking to him about what's going on, and at this point, I need to pause to let you know that Kenneth and the entire family are very, very religious.
I was going to ask, because there's, the snake in the Bible or whatever, right?
And lots of different religions and cultures.
It's a bad thing. It's a temptation.
It always represents evil in some way. I shouldn't say always, but in so many ways. There's a place in Peoples, Ohio called Serpents Mound. And it's super old. It's a burial mound built in the shape of a serpent eating an egg. And it depicts what that Native American tribe thought would be the end of the world. Wow. Where a snake would swallow the sun.
So, okay. And to me, like the whole him cutting off his own penis, if the family was very religious and raised all their kids to be very religious, maybe he was fighting something with himself, like trying to deal with his sexuality, and he didn't want to accept, there could be a whole bunch of different things, but tell me more.
Dealing with things like that are definitely held back, or you're trying to keep in check while you're going through some sort of an event or a psychotic break, whatever this could have been, definitely makes a lot of sense, but the family is very, very religious, and I'm making this point specifically not to speak ill of anyone who is religious, but to help you understand that when this bizarre behavior presented itself, as it did in this instance, and then there's talk of a serpent, that became very, very concerning to the family. So like I mentioned, Kenneth took it upon himself to talk to his son about what was happening, and during this conversation, Kennedy again spoke of his pain in his neck that hasn't gone anywhere, and things started to escalate from there. There was a snake inside of him, he had to remove his penis, and other bizarre things that were cause for concern, and then, according to Kenneth, the dad, Kennedy lashed out at him and managed during their altercation to bite him.
Wow.
And they thought this was just so bizarre, the older brothers had to become involved during the scuffle to separate them, and it was decided at that point that he needed to be restrained because they thought he was a threat to himself and others.
Did they think to put him in a hospital?
They didn't. So This inciting incident was what led the family to believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that Kennedy had been possessed by a demon.
Oh, no. Just take him to a hospital.
This is like behavior that, and being someone who has dealt with behavior that is bizarre, when they ask you, are they a threat to themselves or others? Like, this is an instant guaranteed 72-hour commitment in the United States of America. I'm not sure about the UK.
Yeah.
But this is something where, like, there has been an incident and this person can, at this point, be admitted. So when I read that, I was like, where'd they send him? And then I found out they didn't send him anywhere. So they took him to a bedroom upstairs. They managed to overpower him.
No, I'm just like mind blown, because why don't you just take him to a hospital?
They restrained him to the bed with cable ties, ropes, and handcuffs. They were, the way they decided to combat what was happening to Kennedy was through one single action, and that is prayer.
No.
Colin, his brother, stated this, and this is a real quote about this decision. Quote, "It was clear that thing was in him. What we believed was a demon, it was not natural. It was clearly trying to kill him. We had to restrain him for himself. It was clear if we didn't restrain him, he could have tried to harm people in our family."
No.
It's gonna get rough, right? Now, I do think that after his behavior escalating and him eventually fighting and biting his father, it made sense for them to do something. And restraining him probably seemed like the proper decision at the time to, like, break up a fight. Have
the hospital restrain him. Maybe it's very difficult in the UK at the time to...
I mean, this is 2016. It's not that long ago.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the laws over there work or how the medical system works or how difficult that might have been to do.
I imagine it's fairly similar to ours. But at this point, they could at the very least have him taken into custody for assaulting his father,
That's very true.
But when there's a fight, the first thing you think is, like, break it up, break it up. And if this person, like, won't calm down, I get, like, holding on to them. Like, I've had to do that. I've had to separate people when someone was like, "I'll fucking kill you." Like, hang on to them. Like, just calm down and I'll let you go. But this is definitely the escalated form of this. So this is the night of August 19th, 2016. And after Kennedy was restrained, Kenneth, the father, gathered his other sons, 5 of them, and set a schedule of shifts. So there would always be someone in the room with him. And keep that in mind, because later on it's going to, like, be important. His tactic was to use prayer and, quote, overwhelming force, whatever the fuck that means. That's his own words, overwhelming force.
I just watched a documentary, I think on Netflix or something, about this family who thought their daughter was possessed, and they brought in all these family members, and I think it was in New Zealand or something like that, and they thought, like, that she was possessed, and so they kept pouring water on her and making her drink water, and just, like, all they did was pray over her, and they were, like, forcefully pushing her down on the bed and just holding her down, and it was like, all these family members in the house just praying and just keep pouring water on her constantly, like the whole floor. They had to drill a hole in the floor for the water to drain from the house.
Wow.
Well,
clearly I need to look up that one too.
Yes. Oh man, you should watch that one.
Well, keep all those details in mind because they somewhat connect to what we're about to go over. So what's really weird is that Kenneth says they were using, quote, overwhelming force. And again, that's going to come back up later until they were able to drive the demon out of Kennedy.
Okay.
The next day, as the brothers were taking shifts, Colin, the 26-year-old, who I imagine the reason he was so outspoken about this is because they were both 26, They were probably both very close.
Maybe one is an adopted brother or something.
I think they're all related, to be honest with you, because I saw pictures of them, and they all look very similar. But Colin stated there was, quote, another personality coming through, end quote, during those shifts. They stayed vigilant and had someone with Kennedy at all times praying, and it stated that Kennedy's erratic behavior would get better with his family praying at his side. However, there seemed to be a limit. Colin stated again, quote, at a certain time of night, like a full moon, it would just click, end quote. His behavior would get worse whenever this time of night would hit. That is something that is very similar to a lot of possession stories we talked about. There was always a time of night where all of a sudden things would kick off.
Okay.
And no matter what, the prayer was not helping. Having his family by him was not helping. Kennedy would hear voices and ramble about things from his past that he seemed to regret, including like making some joke about the number 666 when he was a teenager, and specifically things related to evil or the devil. Now, Kennedy was kept restrained for part of the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, and part of the 22nd. I cannot confirm if he was fed during that time at all, but I can confirm that he was not given water.
Okay.
So that's weird that you had a case similar to this where they did nothing but pour water on them.
I don't know if it was part of their religion or what, but
they just restricted the water for whatever reason.
It's so interesting how all of these different cases really are. I will try and find the title of that documentary. Yeah, we got to add that to the topic doc for sure.
Yeah. Regardless of what you think could be happening to someone, I cannot imagine ever thinking depriving someone of water for several days is a way of helping.
I mean, I do that to myself.
You drink some liquids.
Oh, yeah,
you don't go several days without having any liquid at all. And if you're convinced someone is possessed, I've never heard that not giving water is a way to drive the devil out. And at no time does the family at any point in this story state that Kennedy wouldn't accept water or wouldn't let them do it.
They just chose to
They just didn't give him any water, and it's never brought up. Obviously, since I'm sticking about this one particular detail with the water, it kind of tells you where this is going. At 9 a.m. on the morning of August 22nd, 2016, just under 3 full days after Kennedy was restrained, Harry Ife, one of the older brothers, I think the second oldest brother, called 999,
which is 911.
911, yeah, and stated that his younger brother had been complaining of dehydration, which is a really weird way to call and say, hey, we need someone out here immediately. So paramedics are dispatched to the house, and upon arrival, the family let them know that Kennedy had been behaving oddly for the past 3 days. I do not believe they left him restrained when the paramedics were there. I think they cut him loose so the paramedics could come and help.
Do you know what the results of dehydration are, like symptoms that...
Honestly, I don't know a lot off the top of my head, aside from organ failure is the big one.
Yeah.
Like when you've dehydrated for too long, obviously, like your skin is very dry, you're very vascular, and the fact that like your veins pop out, that's why a lot of Marvel actors have to dehydrate for almost 72 full hours. But they don't go full dehydration. They have like a step down scale until they're like their veins are popping and their muscles look tight because your skin is so like stretched because you're so dehydrated. But...
I'm a very dehydrated person, and I will say I got my blood drawn a couple days ago, and it was like pulling syrup out of my body.
And that is not how that's supposed to be. I would really like it if you drank more water. But, so August 22nd, the morning of, the paramedics get there. Cannot confirm if they cut him loose or if the paramedics get there and he's still tied up to the fucking bed or not. But he wasn't better when the paramedics get there. And he, quote, became very agitated and developed breathing difficulties almost immediately.
Wow.
They said the breathing difficulties had sort of started because of like the problem with his throat and gotten worse. But the paramedics got there, and a lot of the sites I went to don't state anything officially. I did find one site that claimed the result of what winds up happening to be cardiac arrest. And Kennedy Ife was pronounced dead at 10:17 a.m.
So they called when they knew it's like there's something wrong with him.
Yeah.
And oh my God. And I'm sure his heart gave out because he was so dehydrated.
Yeah. And whatever's happening to him, obviously there's something wrong aside from the fact that he was being restrained. This wasn't just like inspired by, oh, well, let's just restrain him and not give him any water. But things are going to get really weird here.
I wonder if they didn't feed him either. So he's starving. He's dehydrated. It's just like his body's like, well...
And his body's under a tremendous amount of stress, and he's suffering from sleep deprivation, too. So the nature of what had transpired caused the police to be brought to the scene, and officers and some paramedics both stated that while at the house, Colin Ife attempted a, quote, resurrection by chanting and praying over Kennedy.
Oh, my sweet Oh,
4 of the brothers
geez.
and Kenneth, the father, also had minor injuries discovered when examined, as well as Kenneth having the bite mark, which they found. When searching the home, they found a book called Anger, Madness, and the Demonic that had steps within it on how to conduct an exorcism. Kennedy's body was taken from the home and examined, and when examined, it was found to have over 60 separate injuries.
Wow.
All of which were consistent, quote, this is from I think it's called a pathologist, not a coroner. All of which were, quote, consistent with forceful restraint. The family initially claimed he had only been restrained briefly for his own safety, but after investigation, it was believed and prosecuted as such that briefly was at least 67 hours that were accounted for where he appeared to have been restrained based off of testimony and the examination of the body. Kenneth, Josephine, and their 5 surviving children were all charged with false imprisonment, manslaughter, and causing or allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. The trial took place in 2019, February, I think, of 2019, so almost 2.5 years after the fact. At which time, part of their defense, as stated by their attorney, was that the family held deep, quote, charismatic Christian beliefs. During the trial, it came out that
It's not just charismatic. That's like
it's one of the most bizarre ways I've ever heard to describe
fanaticism?
fanaticism or zealotry. It's just weird. And during the trial, it came out that Collins stated the family had decided to remove all the knives from the kitchen when Kennedy had become aggressive and tried to get into his mother's bedroom. It was also at that time where they chose to restrain him, which is really weird because they said they chose to restrain him initially when he attacked the dad.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
So this is obviously
Nothing's
odd.
adding up.
Nothing's really adding up. Now, it appears that there was an incident where he intended to attack his mother, and while he didn't explicitly state he had a knife, it seems to be the case since afterwards they decided we got to hide all the knives. The most bizarre moment in the trial, which is debatable, came when the prosecutors submitted the body. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and say this isn't the most bizarre thing. I found another thing that's way more fucking bizarre than this.
Okay.
But it came when the prosecutors... No, this is it. My bad. This is it. He submitted
okay.
the body camera footage from one of the officers at the incident to show how the family handled the death of Kennedy.
Oh, were they all like, we don't care that much?
The family gathered around the body of Kennedy and began chanting while Colin led the family in prayer. And he stated, and this is a quote from the video, "He is released right now in the name of Jesus." Which, just the first opening line sounds like they killed him for Jesus.
Yeah.
"No corpse shall be taken from this place because there is no corpse in this place. We call that name back to the land of the living in the name of Jesus."
That's him trying to resurrect
This is the attempted
them.
resurrection that they brought up where it's like, that's weird. It's like the whole family is there and Colin's leading them in prayer. And they use this piece of evidence to show that the family's belief in the possibility and eventual attempts at a resurrection.
That's like cultish or something.
It led to a mishandling of Kennedy's health, which led to his death. Because if you think, I can just bring him back, then you're not doing the things you might want to do if you think that death is actually final or finite. The only attempts the family had made during Kennedy's deterioration to seek outside counsel or help in any way, shape, or form was Josephine speaking to a minister at her church briefly.
That minister should have been like, oh, hell nah.
After
Call the police.
After this consultation, they attempted to cure Kennedy through prayer.
Jeebus.
In a bizarre, absolutely bizarre twist, Colin told police that this whole thing started on August 13th. Like, after the fact, it's like, it actually started like a week before we restrained him.
What?
We were eating at a Chinese buffet. After that, he says that Kennedy began complaining about the pain in his throat, and it wasn't until the 18th where he stated he felt that there was a seed in his stomach, and later in the day brought up the python/snake. So it's like, well, now this sounds like food poisoning in some weird way.
Yeah.
And again, why did you strap him to a fucking bed? And again, the dad admits that he said that they were going to use overwhelming force and prayer.
What if he just had a really big tapeworm?
I mean, I feel like they would discover that during autopsy, but
that's true.
They also might not have allowed an autopsy. I couldn't confirm whether or not they were able to determine cause of death through autopsy or not. The family stated during the 3-day period where he was restrained, he was only restrained for 20 minutes. That is what came to court. We only tied him up for 20 minutes. When they were pressed on this and they were being walked through the days,
injuries?
right? They stated that the first incident took place on the 19th when Kennedy talked about castrating himself and then went after his mom. So now all of a sudden I'm not seeing where the attack on the dad takes place, but he was bit at some point. The dad stated 3 of his sons grabbed Kennedy to restrain him while he was going after his mom. But when they asked him, like, who tied him to the bed, who did what, he was not able to recall who did what.
Because he doesn't want to throw his kids under the bus.
Right. They also stated, go ahead.
I am just, why don't you call the police?
At no point do they involve the authorities or anyone from the medical field.
If your son is attacking you with a knife and you are scared, you call the police.
And even if you don't want to call the police, call an ambulance, you know? Be like, there's something really wrong with my kid. So they also stated that Colin and Kennedy went for a walk at one point during this time of incarceration or whatever, when he was supposedly not actually tied up, and during the walk he, quote, erupted into a rage, end quote, and punched Colin. After that, they decided to restrain him again. So this is the second restraining. What's crazy to me is if they were on a walk and he punched Colin in the face and it was just him and Colin walking, that means they had to go back together, get back to the house, and then Colin be like, "You fucking punched me, tie him up." Like that entire like them trying to say that in this part of the story holds no water unless it was like, this was deliberate.
Did they just hate this guy?
I don't know, man. It's really weird. They admitted after that a third incident took place where things broke bad during morning prayer on Monday, which I believe was the 20th. Or maybe it was the 21st, where he began biting at his own wrists. They said he stood up like he was going to charge them and began biting at his own wrists. And when the mom took the stand, the prosecution brought up her work on videos for a religious group with titles like, quote, "The Reality of Demons," in which they discuss how demons walk among us. There had also been a note found on their bed on her side that discussed instructions on provoking an encounter with anyone who has bewitched your child.
Oh my God.
Which, by the way, when I read this note, tells you to like throw dirt to the north, east, south, and west, but you have to do it at like sunrise or sunset. You can only do it once a day. So you had to take 4 days. So it's like they tied him up, and I really feel like they tied him up so that the mom could do this thing where she's throwing this dirt to try and like draw it out or create some sort of confrontation.
Yeah.
But it actually says it will provoke an encounter, which just doesn't seem like something you want to do. She admitted during that time on the stand to believing in evil spirits, demons, miracles, and resurrection, but insisted her beliefs were not unusual for the Christian faith, which I take exception to, having grown up a Christian, because resurrection is specifically about JC, okay, and not about like, whoops, I killed my kid, let's all pray and chant and he'll come back, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So when either parent were questioned on the zip ties that were used to restrain him, and they found 376 additional zip ties in the house, the rope that was used to restrain him, or the handcuffs that were clearly used to restrain him, that the pathologist determined he had handcuffs on him, and they found handcuffs in the house. This
is like Christian Grey's Red Room.
They could not remember, at least someone got fucked in there and they enjoyed it though. Neither parent could remember anything about where any of those things came from.
That's bullshit.
Or who they belong to.
They're in your house. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but, oh, God.
The prosecutor at the end of the trial stated that the idea that Kennedy was only restrained temporarily was, quote, incredible. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, especially presenting all this evidence about how many injuries this person had. When the trial concluded, the jury spent 4 days deliberating before coming to a verdict. Kenneth, Josephine, Roy, Harry, Colin, Daniel, and Samuel Ife were all cleared of all charges.
That's horseshit.
This case really reminds me of the exorcism of Annalise Michel, who was the inspiration for Emily Rose.
Which you've covered.
A religious family trying to combat behavior they did not understand. This case is very different in that the family did not request outside help of any kind. Because Emily Rose or Annalise Michel did have medical attention given to her, she did have a diagnosis, and they had a priest come to perform the exorcism. This was really just like, we're going to handle this on our own. We don't want anyone else here.
Well, the fact that she had videos, the mom had videos of her, like, giving these lectures or whatever, right?
It was like she helped create these videos for, like, a YouTube channel that was a very religious YouTube channel. So, aside from that short consultation she had with her minister, the family tried to handle the entire thing on their own. And in court, they were cleared of any wrongdoing. So regardless of where
No
anyone wants
justice.
to lay blame, something bizarre and tragic happened to Kennedy Ife. And he started August like any other month in his life, just going about his daily business, and something still unknown caused him to deteriorate in a horrible and rapid way, and he wound up dying. And it's terrible, but in the end, it feels like a cautionary tale for all folks of all walks of life and races and religions that may ever have to deal with something like this. Even though it might not seem like it'll help, please involve emergency services, whether it be police if you need to, or medical professionals if you need to, because it is very important to keep people safe, not just the person who's being afflicted, but the person who they might be targeting at that time, you know? And trying to handle it on your own, it's not something you should have to do. So try and bring those services into your life to make sure that you can get through it and everyone can come out safe on the other side.
Nice.
So, very sad topic, and that, my spooky friends, is the exorcism of Kennedy Ife.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
And that has happened on numerous occasions. Different people.
Yeah, this is not an original story, because we've definitely heard stuff like this before. But every time you hear it, it is sad.
It is very
and what
sad.
it comes down to is like, don't let anything block the well-being of a family member or loved one that you're trying to care for, you know, whether it be pride or religion or whatever the case may be.
The people that are like, well, I don't want them to shame my family.
Yeah, that one pisses me off more
God.
than pretty much all the other ones, where it's like, it's not then about them getting help, it's about your pride being wounded, and someone else has to pay the price for it. So that wasn't exactly the case in this one, but who knows, man? This guy was a very
You never
reputable,
know.
very high-standing official in the British government, and maybe that's why they didn't reach out to anyone. Like, you just really, really don't know, and instead they had to go through an entire trial to find out whether or not they were guilty of, like, letting his son die. So, very sad. But yeah, that is it for my wonderful topic.
Thanks for that.
Before we move into Robin's topic, we're going to take our normal quick commercial break. Don't forget to go to manscaped.com. Check out their products. They are wonderful. And if you use code Scaryish in all caps at checkout, you will receive 20% off and free shipping, which is pretty good. So head on over there, see if there's anything you'd like to pick up. I have a lawnmower. I use it to shave my delicates. It's pretty nice. Robin's used it for herself before. I don't know what she used it on. I'm not going to judge. I don't want to know. If she wants to share it, she can share it with me in private. It's none of your goddamn business. But
Oh my God.
you can also use it on pets. Someone told us that they use it on their pet, and it's really good. So it's pretty powerful. It's fairly cheap. And on top of that, you can save 20%. So give it a shot. Manscaped.com, code Scaryish at checkout. Yeah, we're going to move into our regular commercial break now.
Hello. Welcome to the other side of the episode. Do we say hello at the end of, or the beginning of the episodes?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. You're the one that normally does it.
Okay. This week, my topic is the one that I've known about for a while, but I haven't really committed to. I've heard this, like the topic so many times times on the internet. I've just come across it over and over and over again. I think the other day I covered a topic where it like connected to this one, and I was like, whoa, can't get there because I want to do that separately, you know? So yeah, I didn't commit to it until now. I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of the mystery of who put Bella in the witch elm, and the name itself just screams, learn about me, you know? It's just, it's so interesting.
Just looking over your script, realizing witch elm is not WITCH.
Nope.
It's just my mind is blown.
So,
I need to know more.
It's got me really morbidly curious because when you read it, when you hear it, it's just like, oh, it sounds so interesting. But this mystery begins with a set of 4 young boys named Bob Hart, Tom Willits, Fred Payne, and Bob Farmer. And they were in a place called the Hagley Woods near Stourbridge, a town in the West Midlands of Worcestershire.
Worcestershire?
Worcestershire. Yeah, Worcestershire.
Is how it's spelled.
England.
Sam is losing her mind.
I
right
know.
now.
She's like, God damn it. These boys were just looking around the woods for a bird's nest and to maybe find a rabbit or two with the help of the dogs that they had brought with them. Searching for bird's nests is something that I find strange, but all right, just let us know if kids still do that. Is that a real thing that kids like to do? I don't know. On April 18th, 1943, they snuck into this area on the grounds of the Hagley Hall estate that belonged to a Lord Cobham. Pretty interesting name.
It is interesting.
But
it sounds like Pride and Prejudice almost.
So it's, which I love, by the way.
Or Great Expectations. This guy sounds like he's like...
Crepe Expectations. I gotta eat there.
I hate you so much.
Anyway, it's private property. These guys are sneaking on to this private property, and they're trespassing. During their search, they come across a witch elm, a W-Y-C-H elm. When I have heard of this, I'm like, a witch elm, W-I-T-C-H, you know? But no, it's an actual name for a tree. Big old tree, grows in different ways. There's some that look kind of knobby, some that are just like a bunch of branches out of the ground. It's really interesting. Google it. I did. Anyway, the young boys, like young boys may want to do, one of them decided to climb this tree in order to find any hidden nests or maybe to get a better vantage point. It's not really known why this person climbed this tree.
I mean, sometimes you just gotta climb a tree.
I know I did when I was a kid, but
I
they
did
were
all
like,
the time.
they were like coconut trees. I don't know.
I mean, I grew up around a very forested area. You've seen where I grew up.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's just a big ass tree and you're like, I could fucking climb that thing. And
Did you ever climb a cornstalk? Is that not a thing?
No, it's not a thing.
Are they too weak?
Are you kidding me? Like, you just push over a cornstalk.
Really?
Yeah, they're not durable. Like, they'll stand up to the wind.
Huh.
Yeah, but they're you can just knock down a cornstalk with no effort. And
I've
taken a sword to a cornfield before and it's been like, yeah, and felt like Trunks cutting apart Frieza, because I'm watching Dragon Ball again, by the way.
Dragon Ball Super.
I'm watching DB Super, yeah, DBS.
All right. Yeah, no, I've never been around a cornstalk. I wouldn't know. So I grew up around sugarcane.
I have never seen sugarcane at all.
Shut up!
I mean, where the fuck am I going to see sugarcane? I grew up in Indiana.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Different sides of the country.
Yeah,
anyway, that has nothing to do with the episode. This kid climbs this tree, and instead of finding a bird's nest, he finds something much more ominous. A human skull.
That is much more ominous than a bird's nest.
This discovery has led to a mystery that spans to this day, which I find absolutely incredible. The fact that this was found and there's nothing they can do with it. At first, the boy thought that what he'd found was just an animal skull. And I'm sure now he really wishes that it were, but the skull was complete with teeth intact and even patches of hair still attached to it.
Oh my god, that's like a fresh skull.
Realizing it was of human origin, he dropped the skull back into the tree. Though they agreed to keep it a secret at first because they were trespassing, one of the boys, Tom Willits, just couldn't keep it to himself. I'm sure
Everyone has that friend where you're like, just keep your fucking mouth shut, and they're like, I will, and you know they're lying to you when they say they will.
He told his parents about it, which then went up the ladder to the local authorities. I mean, if I came across that, I wouldn't be able to keep it to myself.
I'm like, no, I am fucking telling my parents I found a human skull.
Yeah, imagine if it were you, and that was your body in there, and I would want justice.
Yeah.
If I were a ghost and I were watching over my body and some person came up to it and was like, nah, dog, I'm good, and just left me and didn't tell anybody about me, I'd haunt the crap out of them. Oh, yeah.
And you got to be strategic. You just got to go to your parents and be like, look, I have something to tell you. I'm okay.
Don't get mad.
Don't get mad. I did something bad. But you need to hear the whole thing. And then you just go through it and you're like, here's what happened.
There's a dead body.
I know I trespassed, but there's a dead body in a fucking tree.
Oh my god. Those other kids should feel ashamed of themselves.
I mean, I can understand being scared and being like, don't tell anyone about this. But
it's a person.
But at the same time, maybe you're afraid you're going to get killed too. If they figure out, it was us that was here.
Yeah.
They're going to come after us.
Yeah.
We found a body on someone's property. Just don't say anything and then we won't attract attention.
That would make sense, yes. I get that point of view.
And they're kids, so I kind of understand that mindset, but I'm definitely the kind of person, growing up at least, where I was like, whoa, some crazy shit happened. I'm getting my scary dad involved.
All right, so police went to where the boys had first discovered the skull and then dug into the tree. So there they found a full skeleton, except for a missing hand. So they found the skeleton, couldn't find the hand. They found the skeleton with a cheap imitation gold ring, one size 5.5 shoe, tiny feet.
Tiny feet.
And the remnants of some taffeta cloth that was found inside the mouth of the skull. Upon further digging around the base of the tree, they found the bones for the other hand. what's interesting is in order to get to this body in the tree, they literally had to like cut the tree down.
So it had like the tree had grown around the body.
It's like, the way they explain it, it's like it was hollow, you know, and there was a big deep hole in the tree, and the body was inside this hole in the tree. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Is it possible they got themselves stuck in there?
Well,
and then no one ever found them?
Let's get into it.
Okay, then.
Let's get started. If you guys don't watch Rosanna Pansino, that's like your thing. Okay. Anyway, the skeleton, of course, had to go under forensic examination. The local professor, James Webster, as well as a Dr. John Lund, determined that the skeleton was a female of about 35 years old, was about 5 feet tall, which makes sense with the tiny feet, with light brown hair, and had been dead for about 18 months at the time of the discovery. So, they had died October of 1941. So 18 months would explain, you know, skeleton status, right?
I think it's very interesting there's still hair, but I'm also not too sure of like when those things get picked off.
I wonder if there's like, little meat on it still.
I think, and normally like things happen because of exposure where like animals come and get it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is weird.
There was also evidence that she had given birth to one child in her lifetime. There was no trauma on her bones, so there wasn't like any blunt force trauma or anything. No broken bones. The outfit that the doctor had pieced together was that she was wearing a brown skirt, a peach petticoat, and a brown knitted cardigan. And this was something that was not uncommon during that time. People just, that was something people wore. So it's not like this fancy person came into town dressed all different than everyone else. It makes it harder to pinpoint who this person could have been. It could have been anyone. Her hair was natural and not chemically altered. What was also pointed out was that the body would not have been able to fit in the hollow of the tree once rigor mortis set in. So this poor person had been put feet first into this hollow of the tree, and she either had to still be alive or it was like very shortly after her death.
When you say feet first, what do you mean? Like
I imagine so that like this tree, right, is growing out of the ground, and there's like a hollow on the inside. So all the branches of the tree are growing out to all the sides, but it's growing like this hollow in the center between all the branches.
Right.
So you just drop this person
into
the center of all the branches.
So it's not like there was an opening on the outside of the trunk. They just like climbed up the tree and just dropped
her in. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Thank you for that. That's horrible, but thank you, because now I understand.
Yeah. According to Webster, that professor that was working on the forensic examination, they said, quote, "I cannot imagine a woman accidentally slipping in there. Neither do I think it's reasonable for a woman to crawl into that place to commit suicide," end quote. So it's, even this person who's like looking into all this is like, that's sketchy. Doesn't make any sense to me. The cloth found inside the mouth of the skull leads some to believe that she may have died of asphyxiation. So someone put something in her mouth, put her in the hole, and she just died.
Right.
Of course, many history know-whos can probably piece together that this was the time of World War II. So there was a lot going on. She could have been a local woman, or she could have just been someone that was passing through at the time. During this era, there were just so many people that went missing, and there were a number of efforts to find out the identity of this skeleton and to find out how they ended up there in the tree. Police contacted every dentist in the area in hopes one of them might have been able to identify her teeth, because her teeth were very irregular. There was like a uniqueness to it that they were like, you should, if you have seen a client like this, you should know, you know. But there were no results, no trails to follow. Impressively, though, the shoes that they found were traced to the original company that created them, and they were able to find all the owners for all the shoes that they created, except for 6 pairs. And these 6 pairs were sold at the same market stall. So I don't know, maybe this stall didn't keep track of whoever they sold the shoes to. But I think that's pretty darn impressive, tracking down all the owners of these shoes.
I can't imagine trying to do that nowadays, but at the same time, it's like, maybe it would be easier. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I mean, it was the 1940s, and I'm sure they were mass-producing shoes.
Either way, that's good detective work.
Yeah, it's impressive. Theories include them having been a wartime covert operative, aka spy. This didn't pick up steam until around 1953, a decade after her discovery. Maybe she worked for the Germans and someone killed her for it. Maybe she was a British citizen who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not really known for sure, but a letter was received by the Wolverhampton Express and Star from someone who identified herself as Anna of Claverley, and she claimed to have information on who Bella was and was interviewed by a journalist named Wilfred Bifford Jones. In December, around Christmas that year, months after the discovery, graffiti was found throughout the area, and it was either painted or written in chalk, and at first it was near where the body was found, and it said, quote, "Who put Lubella down the wych elm," end quote. And police looked into this name to no avail either. Lubella is a pretty unique name, and I'm sure if there were some records of anyone by that name, they would have found it. It would have popped up, you know? And later on, more graffiti was found on a stone monument near the tree and other places around the area. And this time it said, quote, "Who put Bella down the wych elm," end quote. So it wasn't Lubella anymore. It was just shortened to Bella. This particular statement was repeated throughout the area. No one could pinpoint who it was that was writing this all over.
It seems like they're really not able to find out what the hell's going on at all in this town.
And so people are like, is this graffiti supposed to be some type of clue for investigators? Or is it the person who did it taunting them? So this led police to wonder if there was someone who knew who this person was. Was her name Bella? Was her name Lubella? Well, maybe her nickname was Lubella or something like that. There were no missing persons reports of anyone with those names. There were just so many possibilities. And any ideas about who the culprit could be is just conjecture. There's no way to really know for sure who did it. The graffiti continued for some time, but did eventually stop. And no one knows why it stopped either. A letter was received by the Wolverhampton Express and Star from someone who identified herself as Anna of Claverley, and she claimed to have information on who Bella was, and was interviewed by a journalist named Wilfred Bifford Jones. And in this interview, Anna states Bella was the member of a spy ring that was seeking information about the local munitions factories that could be targeted by like German bombers, pretty much. It was later found out that Anna was actually named Una Mossop. Mossop? M-O-S-S-O-P.
Mossop.
She was the wife of a supposed RAF pilot. There was other sources that were like he was never an RAF pilot, but he walked around in an RAF uniform. I don't know. But
this is getting awfully suspicious.
Yeah. So this guy was named Jack. And Jack allegedly witnessed Bella's death. He worked at an ammunitions depot in Coventry and was supposedly passing on information to this guy, to this Dutchman. And she goes on to say that her husband had been told by Bella that she had joined this spy ring with a Dutchman called Van Ralt. And one evening, Jack had been picked up by this Dutchman, and he was with the supposed quote-unquote Bella. And shortly after he got picked up, this Dutchman strangled this woman because of her spy associations. Which is like, if you're a spy too, why would you strangle your partner kind of thing? It just is weird to me. But a different iteration has Jack and this Dutchman drinking together with Bella at a pub when she got drunk and passed out. Then the two of them put her in the tree where she was unable to get out of it when she woke up. And that one doesn't necessarily make sense to me because it doesn't explain the fabric in her mouth or the fact that her hand was on the outside of the tree.
Or why no one saw her.
Yeah. So much time has passed. It's hard to figure out which story is kind of true or either if any of it is true at all because it's really just a story being told by someone.
What is true is that they found that body. So the mystery remains.
Yeah.
Just the ideas of what could have happened are all, at this point, just like hearsay and conjecture.
Yeah. Jack Mossop died in St. George's Mental Hospital in Stafford before the body was ever discovered. Supposedly, he had nightmares of Bella stuffed inside that tree, and it kind of led to his mental breakdown. Don't know if that's true.
I was going to say.
But he did die in a mental hospital.
Okay.
So, this character, the Dutchman, was never found. Una Mossop's story was considered as nothing but hearsay, and is just a story told 12 years after the discovery of this body. And apparently she was, like, estranged from him, too, so maybe it's just her talking shit to talk shit. Who knows?
Kick some dirt on his grave.
Yeah. A man named Donald McCormick was doing research for his book titled Murder by Witchcraft in 1969 and contacted an ex-Nazi named Herr Franz Rothgeb, who spent time in the English Midlands during the war. And supposedly he knew a German agent called Lehrer who had a girlfriend who was also working as a German spy. And she was a Dutch woman named Clarabella Dronkers who lived in Birmingham. And who knows if this is connected to any of the other spy things at all, but what Rathgeb states confidently is that she was about 30 and also had irregular teeth.
Interesting.
There, of course, is no record of a Clarabella Dronkers ever existing.
Why would you keep records of spies? It doesn't make any sense.
Peter Douglas Osborne, a counselor for Birmingham City, tells his father's story. So his father heard a story from a pair of RAF pilots, which, by the way, if you guys didn't know, is like Royal Air Force pilots, around the time that the skeleton was found. And the story that he heard from these pilots was about a woman who had been involved with espionage while working as part of Göring's inner circle. Hermann Göring was a military leader of the Nazi Party during World War II.
I was about to ask.
Yes. He also is a convicted war criminal.
Well, Avi.
Yeah. Supposedly, she was executed during the war, but she had been educated at either Oxford or Cambridge and had very distinctive teeth. And it's like the teeth were like twisted or something like that. So it was very distinctive, like those found on Bella's or in Bella's skull. And from this story, Bella's records wouldn't be found in Britain, but in her home country where she was from. So if she was a spy, the UK, Britain wouldn't have those records. It'd be in her birth country. And any possible matches that they could have found were covered up by an intelligence agency.
Wow.
Because she's a spy, you know? Some MI6 shit, who knows? When Peter asked about the story years later as an adult, his father wanted nothing to do with it and refused to discuss it, which led Peter to believe in some type of intelligence agency conspiracy. Like they told his dad, don't talk about it, don't bring it up, it didn't happen, you know? And if my parents did that to me, where when I was a kid, they told me this story and then I brought it up later, they're like, don't talk about it. It's weird.
Yeah, it's like they almost wanted to get it off their chest and tell someone, like, tell it to someone. So they weren't, like, holding it alone.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, you gotta shut the fuck up about this now, though. Like, we can never talk about that again. So,
years later, there were declassified MI5 files. So not MI6, just a little bit under MI6. Is MI6 real? It is, right?
I'm pretty sure it's real, yeah.
So
it was developed during World War II, but I'm not 100 on that.
Okay.
So
there were declassified MI5 files. Okay, hold on. If you guys don't know what MI6 is, you gotta watch like a 007 movie or something, or some spy movie, because people bring up MI6 all the time, I feel like.
Well, now it is, yeah.
Anyway, so declassified MI5 files that contain information on a German spy named Joseph Jacobs, who was captured after breaking his ankle parachuting into Cambridgeshire in 1941. these led people to believe more in a type of spy story that had to do with all of this. But there are a lot of things that don't quite add up. It's obvious to me that this is not the person they found in the tree. But you'll see once I get into all of it. So after this guy's arrest, a creased photo of a famous German actress named Clara Bauerle, Bauerle, was found in his pocket. And Jacobs told investigators that she was his lover and that the Third Reich had recruited her as a spy. And when I was reading this, I'm just like, this is like some Inglourious Basterds type stuff. But according to Jacobs, she had parachuted into the West Midlands where this tree was, where the body was found. And that was in 1941 and disappeared. So that makes you think like, is this the person that was in the tree in 1941? But that was in October, supposedly. The dating of the skeleton dated to October of 1941. And the actress was 5'10". That is almost a foot taller than the person that they found.
Right.
So that doesn't make sense there. Jacobs was executed by firing squad in August of 1941 before any insight could be given into the fate of his cohort. In 2016, though, it was discovered that Clara had died in a Berlin hospital in December of 1942. So that body definitely is not that person's body. It's really confusing. There's so many of these different stories, different points of view, you know.
Different suspects who turn out to not be the person.
Right. And Jacobs, that spy, could have been lying about everything the whole time. But who knows? I don't know what their torture type things that they did back then were. And again, all these theories and stories and possible culprits, it's all just conjecture. There's so much out there and lots of conspiracy theories that no one even knows what her real name was, you know? A theory that is incredibly morbid and, at least for me, absolutely unlikely, is that she was a human sacrifice of some sort. And the fact that her hand was found at the base of the tree outside and not inside the hollow with the rest of her body leads some to believe that her hand was used for occult purposes. And I've covered the Hand of Glory in the past. I don't even remember how many episodes ago, maybe 10 episodes ago.
It wasn't that long.
It was pretty recent. And if you haven't listened to that one yet, I think it's a pretty good little audio tidbit for your ears, but maybe these people may have used her hand to try to obtain some type of magical powers. Who's to say? Because I just think that's silly, but that's just me. There was a case around the time, the murder of Charles Walton, who was stabbed and pinned to the ground with his own pitchfork in a nearby village that had possible connections to occult activity. So
that sounds like some Michael Myers shit.
Theories of occult activity derive from like this connection between Belladonna, also known as Deadly Nightshade, to the name Bella entombed in the tree. So it's like people are trying to find all these different connections to how this could have been some occult activity. But to me, I don't think that's what it is at all. I much would rather believe in the spy stuff during World War II than it being
the occult side of things.
Though
it could be both. The Germans were really into that occult shit. Just saying.
Shit.
Boom, just crack the fucking case.
Man,
You're welcome.
Okay. So
who put Bella in the witch elm? Hitler. That's who.
Though authorities do believe that a more plausible reason for the moving of her hand is that an animal did it. Though if it were an animal, why would they only move the hand and not the rest of the body, you know,
right,
or any other parts of the body? It's very strange. Plus, the people had to cut down this tree to get to the rest of the body. How would an animal get anything out, you know? All right. So no one knows who this person really was. It's just a really sad story of this mystery that will never be solved. The story kind of became local lore / legend and is a mystery to this day.
That's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah.
It's like just an unexplained body popping up in one of the most bizarre locations and everyone's like, spies? Occult? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's just, I really wonder if something like this happened today if it would be any easier to figure out exactly what had happened or who it was, but I'd like to think so. Let's hope it doesn't happen, though.
Yeah.
So, good stuff.
Yeah.
Feel very educated now, and it's sad that they cut the tree down, because I was going to say, like, maybe psychic mediums could go to the tree and
I don't think people are allowed to know exactly where it is.
That's probably for the best, so. But, yeah, solid stuff, Robin. All right, so I think that's just about everything we have for this episode. I think we kind of crushed it on the topic front. Not going to pat myself on the back too hard, but we did a pretty good job.
Tap, tap.
Oh, two-tapper, just what I was looking for. But yeah, if anyone out there has a story they would like to share with us, whether it's supernatural, paranormal, spiritual, true crime, extraterrestrial in nature, feel free to do so. Please email storytime@scaryish.com. You can also go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, I know I talked about it already, but remind us how folks can donate to us monetarily if they would like to do so.
All right, so it's January, which means January Patreon push, and I'm going to tell you about Patreon. Patreon.com/scarishpodcast. I know we bring it up every year. We've been doing this for 3 years. But Patreon is the main way we get support for the podcast, and we really couldn't be here without you. Patreon is a monthly kind of subscription type of thing. There's a bunch of different tiers. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get access to Patreon exclusive merchandise and ad-free episodes. So if you want to grab ad-free episodes, that's a really good way to do it.
Plus early content.
Right now, for our Badge of Honor tier and above, if you join now, you'll still be getting the Krampus keychain and magnet that I made for the winter season. Spring is going to be in a couple months, and that will be the Nessie keychain that I have made. Hopefully you guys are excited about that one. But I have little merch things like that I make for you guys, and I design it all myself. And it's just something that I package myself and I send out to you guys. I usually write a little hand note and stuff like that. So that's always a nice thing to do. And then we also have a coffee if you don't like the whole monthly subscription idea. If you go to ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast, those are one-time donations. All your donations go to us upgrading our studio setup and having a little bit more time to make content and stuff for you, because we still work jobs. I'm still going to school. I still have a job. Adam has a full-time job. So you guys just help us keep going.
Indeed. It really, really does help. So please head over to Patreon or Coffee if you can. And if not, we understand, but scrounge through those couch cushions for those 4 quarters and see if you can sign up and see if you think it's worth it. We sincerely believe it is. So I think that's just about everything we have for this episode. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.